Hello and welcome to the Rockies Now podcast. My name is Steven. Right with me is Adam, Tom, and we have a special guest. We have Mike in the house from BSB Blake Street Banner. Mike, good to have you back on the show. And we got a tweet from your boss Aaron the other day, telling us that you got it through what was it 30 of the celebrations of Jeffrey Yan of doing the splits and the jump and everything. So we got to see it, man. We got to see it on social media.
Yeah, the bet was if he gets 30 strikeouts in the
Yeah,
MLB this
or
year,
30
I have
strikeouts.
to
Yeah.
recreate that. So you'll see it when it
Yeah.
happens. I don't
Yeah.
want to root against a player, but if there was ever a player that I don't want to get 30 strikeouts, Jan would be that guy.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday, yeah, didn't look too good. Almost hit three batters, and yeah, it was not too great. I mean, I like the tenacity. I like the energy that he has. The Rockies could definitely use a guy like Jeffrey Yan, but there's a reason why he has yet to be in the big leagues. It's unfortunate for him, but maybe this will be a big part of the Rockies bullpen moving forward this year. But we'll see. I mean, the Rockies do have a lot of good young arms in the bullpen, which we talked about in our previous episodes doing the Rockies player previews. But Mike, again, good to have you back on. For those who have not heard of Blake Street Banner, they cover the Rockies and the Rockies prospect, do a heck of a job. Highly recommend watching those guys. They do podcasts, make excellent articles almost daily. I love reading them. They do an excellent job. So go follow those guys out there. Go follow Lewis at Lewis Won't Shut Up on X. So great follow over there. You'll see a lot of tweets, a lot of fun tweets. So let's talk about prospects. Lewis, of course, we had you on last year, and again, it was quite a bit different than it is this year. What were your thoughts on some of the, debuts last year from like Jordan Beck and some of the other guys that came up for the Rockies later in the season? Was there a prospect that you kind of knew, oh yeah, I'm expecting him to have a slow start, or man, I did not expect him to have a nice start to his pro ball career?
Yeah, I think Drew Romo is one of the guys. He barely played at the end of last year. And if you look at his Albuquerque numbers, you're probably thinking this guy would rake in the MLB. He came up, he was really not even competitive in a lot of his at-bats, struck out like 35% of the time. His OPS plus was like 9, which is just absurd. But I kind of figured that would happen with him. He's a defensive first catcher. So in my eyes, if he can get anything from the offensive game, if he can just become like average on the offensive side of the spectrum, then he would be, I think he could be our best catcher of all time. Granted, that's not saying anything like too strong there. It's not a hot take or anything. But if there's ever a guy that I'm not worried about for the bad stats from last year, it's definitely Drew Romo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought he did a pretty decent job. I wish we could have given him more playing time at the end of the season, but I get why they didn't, because he played a whole lot last year and he was just out of gas. And so I'm excited to see him. And again, there was a lineup the other day that looked kind of eerily like what we might see on opening day. So I'm not sure. I think we've talked about before is that I think we're going to see Drew Romo as of right now probably start in AAA just to get everyday at bats, which is a good thing for the Rockies. Finally have depth. They have decent catchers at the position, even Aaron Nola, which we talked about a few weeks ago. But yeah, I mean, they have Drew Romo there. They have Hunter Goodman, who's having a really good spring. He's knocking the cover off the ball. He's looking pretty confident. I love Hunter Goodman, so he's looking solid to be the backup behind Jacob Stallings. Good stuff, man. With the MLB pipeline list that just recently came out just the other day, I have some question marks, as with every single list that they always come out with. Some are better than the others, but this one, I agree with the top 2 players, maybe not the top 5. I mean, I love Brody Brecht, which we'll talk about, and Tom will talk about here in a minute. But, Dolander clearly number 1. Condon, just to be a little bit safe, we'll also talk about him in a bit. Cole Carrig was kind of surprising to be at number 3. Robert Kalaz already at number 4, and this guy has barely played A ball. And then Brody Brecht, who is slated to start in rookie ball this year, which I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to be higher than that. But yeah, I mean, Zach Veen's only at 8. Like, what are we doing? This guy is knocking, like I said with Hunter Goodman, knocking the cover off the ball, and he's doing all these bat flips in spring training, and you're putting him at 8, a little bit too low in my opinion. But Mike, what are your analysis on the list here, and do you agree with it? Do you not agree with it, or are there some names that you're like, ooh, I'm surprised he didn't make the top 10?
I mean, I don't hate the list. I wouldn't have made this one have been my top 10. I don't think it's egregiously bad, but I think it's kind of fun actually with where they put players. Like Zach Veen, I can understand why he's 8th. Struggles to hit velo. If it's up and in, he struggles hard. And we know in the MLB, like if you struggle at one thing, they're gonna just compound that and just keep throwing that at you. The Carrick and Callis getting that top 5 ranking is huge. I know Callis is big if you're like investing in sports cards. People love his sports card because they have a lot of faith in him. Yeah. Amador falling to 9, I think is a little weird. I still think he's a top 5 guy in the system. I mean, his contact is there. Look, he struggled last year, but I feel like we've seen this all the time with high prospects. We're on like year 8 of Jordan Walker, and people are still telling me he's a top 5 prospect. So I don't hate it. Yeah. Sean Sullivan, I think should have been higher. He's at 10, but I'm not going to nitpick everything.
Yeah, and why don't we talk a little bit about Brody Brecht, because I know coming out of Iowa, kind of close to where Tom is in Illinois. So Tom, I'm going to hand off over to you. Let's talk a little bit about Brody Brecht, shall we?
Yeah, the unique thing about his arsenal, is, of course, he has a good fastball and a high-rated slider, which, as we all know, can play pretty well at altitude. What about, is there any noise or talk or conversation about his splitter and how that could play if he does make it to the big leagues and pitch at altitude, or even if he makes it to Albuquerque as well?
Great question, and that splitter is it's a good changeup one. They're gonna want him to throw that, right? You cannot have 2 pitches, especially in Colorado. It's a good swing and miss pitch for him currently, but he doesn't throw it enough that it's not refined, is what I'll say. His fastball is really good. His slider is, I think, the best pitch is Arsenal. I think that's his go-to pitch to get outs. His fastball, some people will critique it saying it's not good enough or not good enough yet. And then throughout all of this, we like what he has. He struggles with command, which is one thing that will kill any prospect in baseball. But I like his arsenal. I think he needs more refinement to it, and especially with the command.
Yeah, I would agree, because a splitter, especially if that's one you don't harness command of, it can really just it'll just float in and be crushed a country mile. So I can understand that part. And just a quick side comment about Brody. Is there, I know, just a quick side story. One of my brother's old high school teammates actually pitched at Iowa. So that's, so I know some of the guys some people coming out of that program. Do they see him long-term as a bullpen guy, or do they see maybe him working as a starter, or is probably bullpen his ultimate role?
They're definitely going to try him as a starter, but if he is a bullpen guy, which I think that's a negative outlook on him, if that's what you think that will happen, I think they're going to try as hard as they can to make him a starter. But if he turns into a bullpen guy, he'll be one hell of a bullpen guy.
And and pivoting real quick to 2 other guys, Peralta and Blaylock are down in the mid-20s. Is it because they've already had their cup of coffee in the majors and did quite well, actually? Is that why they're just still ranked that far ahead, because they're expected to be in the major leagues next year and not be prospects anymore? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, Blaylock was always kind of down here. I think Blaylock coming after this spring, I think they should rate him higher, right? Because he can go long in the games, and you're not really worried about him only being a reliever. And then Peralta, that's just a reliever thing. They don't like to rate relievers high at all. Gotcha. Halverson is 17th on their list?
Yeah.
18,
yeah.
Well, that's good. Well, the one thing is we all know, everyone's talking about Chase Dollander, but again, Sean Sullivan, Carson Palmquist, Cade Denton, Brody Brecht, there's a lot of good arms in the system. So hopefully we can see more of them come up and have some success. So
a lot of good bullpen guys. You said, Brody, if he turns into a bullpen guy, that's great. But Peralta, Jaden Hill, Halverson, those 3 right there immediately. And we still have Vodnik, we forget. And so I know Herrera too, both Herreras. So, I think the bullpen we look 10 years from now. I think the guys we have currently in the system would make a pretty good bullpen.
And last side question I just want to ask: is there a possibility Blaylock could be the sixth guy in if one of the starters does get hurt?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think
Okay.
if we see Blaylock as a starter at some point, any point this year, I wouldn't be surprised.
Gotcha. I figured as much. I just thought because he could be a long man, but again, I do see he had some good starts last year.
And his numbers look really good in spring training. He's throwing quicker and harder than the people love him. So the smart people tend to really like what's happening.
I don't know if you listened to when it was our 2 episodes ago or an episode ago. Steven, I guess according to Steven, I've now given him a nickname.
Yeah, Hank Blaylock.
I keep calling him Bradley Blaylock. I'm so sorry. Please don't come at me. I'm sorry, but I guess my nickname for you is now Hank, and maybe it'll catch on a little bit.
Yeah, we need to make merch or something. Put just Hank. That's an idea.
T-shirt idea.
Yeah. T-shirt idea. Another guy is Jordy Vargas at 14. Maybe that's a little bit high, but I do like Jordy Vargas. Nothing too crazy. He does have a decent changeup. Does have a good curveball as well. They're giving him an ETA of 2027. Do you think that's accurate, Lewis?
Yeah, this name immediately, when I read this pipeline, I immediately saw Vargas at 14 because last year he was 24 and he hasn't played since that list was made. So either something is miscommunication or they know something that we
injuries.
don't.
Yeah.
So Vargas is a guy that BSB loves. He has Tyler. That's like one of his favorite pitching prospects. So he's been out for like the past year and a half. So 2027 might be a little rough of an estimate, but there's a lot of guys ahead of him and he's missed so much time that they're not going to want to push him up early. Like, we're not going to see the Dollander thing where we're like, oh, when's this guy going to get called up? When's this guy going to get called up? No, he's probably going to stay, and I'm assuming Spokane this year, probably the whole year. Maybe at the end go to Hartford.
Yeah. Yeah, Sean in the comments says, I'm worried we don't have enough sure power on the prospect list outside of Fernandez and Condon. I agree with that. I think in time we're going to see some guy. I mean, Ryan Ritter's a guy that, we talked about last time you were on here, I think a year ago. This guy is speeding his way through the minor leagues. He is tearing it up in my Out of the Park Baseball Rockies franchise. He has like 40 home runs in Albuquerque. It's insane. And I'm not saying he's going to be that type of guy, but Ryan Ritter, man, I mean, this guy coming out of, I believe, Kentucky, his defense was always really, really good, but the bat was like, the bat is going to be mediocre at best. But no, this guy's bat has been real in the minor leagues. I mean, it's nothing to say, oh, he's going to win MVP or whatever, but this guy could be an all-star. I mean, Ryan Ritter has that potential, I think, and I think some people don't see that. And I don't think there's a lot of love going around Ryan Ritter that there should be. I think there should be eyes on him as much as possible. And I know for, Adam and me especially, and I know all of us here, Rockies Now, we want to see the Rockies play these prospects because Adam and I, we were discussing Aaronola a couple of weeks ago, how, it's the Rockies' way to, bring in a veteran outfielder or a veteran catcher to block Drew Romo. Harold Castro a couple of years ago. Oh, that was, and then Jurickson Profar, which, Moustakas, who just retired. So congrats to him. But, I'm going to hand it off to you here to Adam and just, maybe some prospects that he's looking at on the list that he likes or is somewhat concerned about, and then we'll get into Condon here in a bit. So I'm going to hand it off to Adam here.
Yeah, so I'm actually curious to get your opinion on how the outfield's going to shape up this year, because we've got Fernandez and Bean obviously in the top 10, and we've got Beck and Doyle and Jones, which a lot of us expect them to be a solid outfield. But how do you see that shaping out? When do you think we would actually see Bean and Fernandez, and who would actually be the odd man out? Would it take like an injury, or would maybe Fernandez slide into some sort of like DH role? I don't think they would do that straight out of the minors, but I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and this kind of starts with, I was a huge Charlie Blackmon fan, but now that he's gone, it's freed up so much at-bats for these guys, so many at-bats. For the Bean and Fernandez conversation, Patrick Lyons pointed out that this might be like a number theory thing. For spring training, Zach Bean got an actual number 13, his actual number. And Fernandez got like 88 or 86, one of the ones they throw to the guys that aren't really going to make the team. So that's huge. And like, that might not mean anything. Historically, the front office has really liked Fernandez. A lot of the scouting, like scouts love that guy, whether that's inside the Rockies or outside scouts talking about him. They love his raw power. They love the future numbers he could put up. I'm more of a Veen guy. I think Veen's more versatile. Like I said, he struggles to hit that fastball up and in, which Eastern League he was raking last year, but it was a constant theme of when he gets that fastball up and in, it was a whiff every time. So in the MLB, he's going to have to clean that up. But for the outfield, though, like it's a BSB and everybody there that we talk to, we have no clue. We have no clue what it's going to look like. All right, the Rockies might not even know what they're doing with it either. We know we have Doyle. You're going to want to give Nolan Jones as many at-bats because you want to see if that was a slump or if the prior season was just a miraculous season. You want to see how good he really is. Yeah. And then you have Sean Bouchard, who I think you should give at-bats to. I think he's going to – if you want to win games, Sean Bouchard's pretty good. And like you brought up, Jordan Beck. We have so many of these guys. Benny Montgomery's a guy that, like, maybe we'll talk about him later, but 2 seasons in a row he's been hurt. But he was like a top 10 prospect in the system for the past 3 years. And I know he was an invite to camp, just got sent back to the minors. But, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me to see anything right now. Just as long as, like, we don't see Nick Martini taking up at-bats, I'm not going to be too worried about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he is doing well, and I think I mean, the Cactus League numbers say that he's one of the, I think, in the top 10 categories for OPS, and it's just I didn't know.
The Rockies are breaking in general.
Bradley Zimmer last year was the same way.
I forget I forget who it was, but that person on X, constantly commented on your guys' page and Patrick Lyons' page of like, how dare the Rockies get rid of my glorious Bradley Zimmer. It's gonna be a race down to the end to see who's gonna get that right field spot, Jordan Beck, Veen, or it's really up in the air. It could be Veen, it could be, personally for me, I think we've all agreed it's going to be Jordan Beck, just because of the experience that he's had. I think Beck is due for a breakout year. It reminds me a little bit of Britton Doyle. Doyle didn't really have a breakout year by any means of the imagination in 23. And look what happened to him this past year. And of course, Beck is a completely different player, but their ceilings are kind of similar. I see some similarities there. Beck is, of course, not as good as defensively as Doyle is, but offensively, I think it definitely is there for Beck to be close to around the same level as Doyle. So, again, it's really up in the air. So
I think those storylines kind of. If you guys remember, Doyle wasn't this like prize prospect of the Rockies. He got called up, and we saw the defensive plays. He struggled on his at bats, but when he kind of took off and became this very good player he is now, it kind of came out of nowhere. Like if we look at Veen, we look at these guys, like that could happen to any of them. And I think we have enough bullets in the chamber that one or two of these guys are going to end up hitting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Adam made a point a few weeks ago that this guy is a guy that Zach Veen is a guy that he puts the team on his back, and the Rockies have needed a guy like that for a long time, and the Rockies frankly have waited for Veen for the last 5 years, 4 to 5 years for him to come up. And granted, he came out of high school, and usually those guys take longer to get up here. But Veen is that guy, and if he can stay healthy, that's the question. He could take this team to a completely different place to
Steve,
where, right? And so
we need a guy that other teams and other fans don't like.
Yeah,
and we need a guy that kind of does some stuff sometimes that makes people put the Rockies on the map a little bit and be like an energy guy. I think would be awesome, especially with all the competition they're going to face with the Dodgers and everyone in the division. They need a guy like that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I could care less, if fans were upset that he had that bat flip. Let him enjoy the moment. It's spring training, and I think a lot of it too. I mean, he was blacked out in the moment, which we all do. Whenever we have our moments in sports or whatever, every single player does that. But I think a lot of it too was probably emotion of what he's had to go through the past couple of years, the wrist injuries, the foot, like everything. I think he needs his space. He needs his time. And I think he's going to be, I think as spring goes on, if he continues to do this, I mean, he's doing really well. I mean, he's stealing bases. He's getting on base. He's walking now, which is really positive because in the minor leagues, that was a struggle. He couldn't walk. And so now he's starting to walk in spring training. And the Rockies, I know it's, I posted this yesterday on our Instagram that, hey, it's spring training, but we're gonna win the division if we keep playing like this. And but no, it's so good to see, Zach Veen and some of these guys. Amador is hitting 333, I think, this spring. Of course, this guy's not a prospect. Tyro Estrada is hitting 500. And again, count your chickens before they hatch. But it's just, I know it's spring training, but you gotta like Tyler Estrada, man, who is just a placeholder for Amador, who I think is getting closer every single day to being that second baseman for the Rockies, officially, because I still think he needs a little bit more time. He's still young. It's not like the Rockies need to rush him up. They have a decent second baseman in Estrada. But, I've told, Adam and Tom this multiple times on the pod, is that I think I wouldn't be surprised if Estrada's off the team by July or August, and they have Amador as the everyday second baseman. And that's if Estrada is just not doing well, or if he's injured. But who knows? Maybe Estrada will be here for the entire season, and maybe Amador will be on the bench. But preferably, I'd like to see Amador get a little bit more at bats and get everyday playing time in either AAA or AA. More than likely, it's going to be AA. I think he's ready for that.
Yeah, I'm curious, Steve, when it comes to Amador, the whole league in general tends to no longer value guys who make consistent contact without power.
Yeah.
So I'm always interested to see what the Rockies think of him, as far as, is he the second baseman of the future, or is he some sort of, bridge to something better? I don't know, because the league doesn't tend to value guys like that anymore. And there's a couple of things with him too, where he has to stay healthy, and he has to prove that he can stay in good shape, come in good shape and stay in good shape. So there's a couple of caveats with him. I think he's a fantastic talent. But I just wonder, Lewis, maybe if you have an opinion on that, of the Rockies, how they see him and where you think he fits as far as value is concerned in MLB.
That's a great question. I mean, that's a very modern problem to have, right? You're too good at hitting, but you can't hit for power. That's when Amador's kind of whole thing. It's like, we know you'll hit, we know you'll put balls in play. It's how many home runs are you going to hit? And I think if you give him a whole season, he'd probably hit double digits. I like his glove, but we saw with Brendan Rodgers, good glove at second doesn't always translate to you being a valuable player. So I do think Amador is walking this tight line of finding a way to be valuable, like unlike other guys in the system, like Romo, who's almost always going to be valuable because that defense is so prized at catcher. I do like you already know he's going to get a good batting average, and I think the power has improved every single season. I know last year he had like that 1 month where he didn't get a hit. He went like 0 for 40 or something crazy. But I think the power will translate soon. He's still a young guy. I think 21, 22.
That's 21.
21. So, 22 in a month. So still a young guy. Yeah, it's definitely a problem that we will see if he gets everyday at bats. And I don't think we should be writing off Estrada. Estrada's a guy that, for the past 5 years, has been an above average hitter, which I don't think the Rockies had a qualified hitter outside of Brenton Doyle that was above average last year. So that would, in Rockies terms, that's like a 310 average, bunch of home runs. I think he could put that up, and I wouldn't be that surprised.
Mm-hmm.
No, but I think they might move him, to Steven's point, at the deadline, just because his value does increase and the Rockies might have other designs. But I'll be interested to see what they do with him.
There is definitely a let's hope it's not in the middle where it's like he's just average. That's kind of the worst.
Yeah.
I want him to be really good at trade or really bad at cut. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, his defense is Gold Glove elite, close to that. I mean, the middle infield is going to be solid this year. I mean, even the infield, we have Gold Glove potential, Toglia, McMahon. And I forget that Estrada was a top Yankees prospect back in the day. I mean, a lot of people thought that this guy was, if Jeter was going to keep playing, that it was going to be Jeter at short, Estrada at second base, or this guy was going to replace Jeter. So, I'm excited for Estrada. I really have loved, his plate discipline. He does strike out a little bit, but again, so far this spring, he's looked great. Again, hitting 500, got a triple the other day off the wall in right center field. I will
say with Estrada though, they did when they signed him, and then 2026 is a mutual
option
contract option, which doesn't bode for the Almador fans out there well.
No.
For the team building aspect, it seems like they want him to.
Yeah. And don't if I remember correctly, I think Stallings is also on an option for 2026. Am I correct? Okay.
Hey, Stallings was our best hitter last year.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what I keep saying, man. I'm like, it's gonna be hard to get him out of there.
And I think he's the only one to do it both away and home. He was the most consistent.
Yeah. I mean, he's spent all those years in Pittsburgh and coming to Coors Field, and I mean, he's a seasoned veteran, and I like Stallings, I really do, and I was excited when we signed him because it's just like he had really good chemistry with the Marlins pitchers in 23, which they went to the playoffs, which is still crazy to think about because looking at the Marlins now, they're in the trash can. Again, I know I feel bad for the Marlins, but at the same time, though, I love trashing them because it's just like I feel like they had no idea what they're doing. They do have good young prospects. I really like their farm system, but they're kind of in the same boat as the Rockies, and it's kind of funny. Yet the Marlins have two World Series championships, but yet they've kind of been on the same path as the Rockies have been, and here they started the same year as a franchise, right? 1993. So. I like Stallings, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen with him this year. I expect him now as I look at it. Originally, I was like, I could see him getting traded at the deadline, but as I see it, I think Stallings is going to play the entire season with the Rockies. I don't really see any way unless if a team meets a guy like Stallings in the playoffs, which is possible. But I feel like we're going to see Stallings with the Rockies for the entire season. So I'm not sure if you have the same idea with that.
Yeah, I mean, I like Stallings. I'm trying to look at Elias Diaz. Is he?
He's with the Padres.
He's
Padres.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's projected to be the opening day catcher on some people's boards.
There you go. Because I remember his value last year tanked. I don't know if you guys remember this.
Deadline. Yep.
And then we couldn't move him at the deadline. I don't know if we tried or not, but then we ended up just cutting him so Romo could play. So the catcher position is one that fans. I mean, we don't really know how to value. Other positions, we kind of know who's good, who's bad, or who's valuable, who's not. The catcher position is one that is kind of random. Some teams like some styles of catchers. Some want their catchers to hit. Some want defense. So clearly we like Stallings. I'm sure we're gonna that's just gonna be the catcher, and we're just gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah. And then I do have one question as we start to wrap this thing up tonight. What are your thoughts on the ABS challenge? Because a lot of people have been talking about how this is going to hurt catcher's framing or the value of a catcher's glove. Just give me your thoughts on that. I want to hear your thoughts, Louis, on the ABS system.
So there's a couple of things I'm intrigued of. One, will shorter players, will this help or hurt them? I'm assuming it's going to help them.
Yeah.
Two, I think my, conspiracy is when a player has good plate discipline, they get more calls just because they have good plate discipline, and vice versa for players that don't have a good eye. So I wonder if that's going to be different. Is that going to be in the ML the actual season, or is that just testing?
I don't think so. I think this year's just the testing period. Originally, I don't know why, but for some reason I thought it was going to be in the season as well. I was like, oh, we're going to see this in the regular season. I'm curious to see how it's going to work out on opening day, that sort of thing. But no, it won't be in the regular season this year. No. I would not be surprised if it is for next year or the following year. But supposedly there's rumors about there's going to be another lockout after the 2026. So it's just I can't go through that again. Yeah, it's going to be a war, but I think it's going to be a battle, the final battle. It's going to get bloody, but I don't know. There might be some good stuff coming out there. I don't know. We'll see. The last one was horrible.
I actually like the balls and strikes being subjective. Yeah. I think that's a really cool part of baseball. I will miss us yelling at umpires when it goes.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Same. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, Talking about let's get back to Rocky's prospect. We need to talk about Charlie Condon, who is on our thumbnail today. Charlie Condon, who is arguably one of the most, other than Dolander's, the most excited Rockies prospect in the entire system, and one of the most exciting prospects in baseball. Got drafted, last year, 3rd overall. The Reds skipped on him, which was surprising for Tom and I when we were reacting to it. And I'll never forget, a lot of Reds fans were like, how could you pass on Condon and get, Chase Burns? I think Chase Burns is going to be a good pitcher, but I like Condon because the Rockies need a power bat like Condon, like Sean said it in the comments earlier. But, there's been some concern around Rockies Nation about, Condon, he's a wash, or he hit 185 or whatever in Spokane this past year. Only 1 home run, 11 RBIs, 4 doubles, a triple. I want to hear your thoughts on Condon, Lewis. And do you think that, do you think a lot of it was because of I think it was his wrist injury that he had that he was playing through? Or do you think that, hey, give him some time?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think you brought up the draft last year. I think the Reds, there's like a rule by their owner that they're not allowed to go over slot in the first round or something like that. It was something like that is the reason they didn't get Condon. Granted, I'm sure they still like Chase Burns.
Yeah.
I like Burns, not Burns. I like Condon. I like them both, actually. But one thing you have to look at is last year in college baseball, the ball was a little juiced. I know that's, nowadays, juicing the ball it's always a conversation topic. So the last year was pretty obvious. Like, balls are taken off like it was nothing. And I'm not gonna slight him on that, but that is one thing. When people say the greatest college hitter of all time, there might be an asterisk next to that. Personally, though, to me, like, his power will be there. It's gonna stay there. It's legit power. It's 60, 70 grade power, which is probably the most we have on the Rockies system right now. Now, the one question is, 2 questions really. The hit tool. There's a lot of worries about the hit tool. Can the hit tool be good enough? Because if you have really good power, but not a lot of hits, especially in the MLB, like, you're like Joey Gallo. And Joey Gallo, like, you don't really want Joey Gallo. You want, especially if you're the 3rd overall pick, right? Mm-hmm. So the question is, hey, how will the hit tool translate? Especially he hasn't seen any baseball above high A, and he didn't do that well last year in high A. Granted, I'm sure he's going to do fine. And then the second problem you run into is the defensive capability or lack thereof. He's going to be a corner guy, maybe a third base guy. But look, if he can develop the hit tool like we think he will, and he becomes one of the best, offensive or hitters in all of baseball, then I don't care what position he plays. It's going to be worth it.
He's going to be fine. Yeah, I agree. I think there might be a little bit of pressure too, because a lot of people gave him comps to Chris Bryant and all that. But even Chris Bryant said that this guy could be even better than him when he was in college, which is crazy. And, hopefully that remains, to be true. But yeah, I think, I think Bill Schmidt said at the winter meetings that he thinks that the wrist injury was played a factor in last year. And granted, I remember last year in the playoffs, when Spokane was in the playoffs, Condon actually started seeing the ball a lot better. And that was promising to see. And I think a lot of it too, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Romo. I mean, Condon exhausted from his spring season with Georgia. And of course he had some period of rest in between, with the draft and everything, but he's got to be, this is completely new to him. Moving all the way out east, out west to Spokane, he's an Eastern guy, completely different, area of the country, different environment, not college anymore, to where you're going from, sellout crowds to only, a couple hundred a night, right? On average, maybe a little bit more than that. But I agree with Lux. I think it's a great match. Again, there's going to be bumps and bruises. I think, you look at Jack Caglione with the Royals. That's an excellent matchup for that team. He's carrying the ball right now and for the Royals, and I think he's going to be a great player for them. But I think Condon is going to be a great player. Maybe I project him to be a roughly 35 home run guy for the Rockies in the future. I think last year I was saying 40 or 45, which is maybe a little bit too high, but we shall see.
I will say, Fangraphs has been on the front line of Condon, misinformation or, anti-Condon propaganda. They have his hit 2 out of 30 out of 80. They don't have him in their top 100 prospects. They're the only ones that does that. They also always have an odd top 100 list, but that's just interesting to put out there. Fangraphs, they know what they're doing. They know what they're talking about, and they have a lot of slights for Condon.
Yeah.
I think, Steve, it's the world we live in, right? People have to be a little bit more patient with with somebody who just came into pro ball, you know. And I do think, and all of us have watched him play a little bit in Spokane, and I think the approach that he had in college wasn't necessarily there. I think he was a little overzealous, and I think that's something that we can expect from a young player trying to make an impression, especially when you're picked that high. I personally am not very concerned about this at this point because there's just not a huge sample size, you know, and it's just the times we live in, you know. If you don't perform right now, it's like he's a bust, you know, and it's just that's crazy, especially in baseball. So I know Tom has something to say on that.
No, just real quick. I mean, people don't talk about this enough. I feel the adjustment from aluminum to wood bats there's a big difference. It is more than you think. The average fan will never truly understand how big of an adjustment is going from aluminum
100%.
bats to wood bats. Whether it's the impact of the bat, or even swinging the bat's very different because the weight distribution is different. So, but again, that's a whole separate episode. I can go on about that. But you know, he just needs to adjust to that, not only to playing on a professional schedule, because, you know, the travel schedule, even in the minors, can be tough too, especially with the whole weekend travel series.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to playing in college. But yeah, you know, just give the guy some time. And, you know, I didn't realize, the one thing is, maybe this is just foolhardy. I mean, I realized he was over 6'5".
Yeah,
I thought he was 6'4", 6'3", but he's 6'6". So, but you know, again, we'll have to wait and see. Give it time. And I know some people are having a cow about how he was ranked in front of Dolander for a brief period of time.
Yeah.
I kind of, before we drafted him last year, I kind of had like a joke where it was like, and you're going to know this guy well, Tom. Like, oh, he's the best hitter. Then I would always say best hitter since Andrew Vaughn in college. So
yeah, that's
so let's hopefully it's not Andrew Vaughn.
Well, yeah, that's a pretty good comparison. But in Andrew Vaughn's defense, he skipped double and triple A in his development. So again, the comparison is real. I do agree that is a good comparison. But I think with Charlie Condon, I think he's got a little bit more on certain parts of the hit tool than Vaughn did, because, you know, again, Golden Spikes, being the Golden Spikes Award winner is one thing, but like I said, going from college to pro is completely different, because in college is a big difference. It's facing an 86 mile-an-hour fastball to facing a mid-90s, even a low mid-90s fastball in the minor leagues. So,
yeah, and I was looking at his baseball reference page. Condon really did well with strikeouts in college. He didn't strike out much, and that gives me hope. He's going to strike out a little bit more in the big leagues. I get it. But as long as he's not striking out 1 or 2 or 3 times a night, he's going to be a great hitter.
He had that 34-4 ratio in Spokane, and people are freaking out. It's like,
and like you said, Adam, it's a small sample size, only 109 at bats, only 109, and that's not a whole lot. That's only a small percentage. I mean, minor leagues, like, you know, Tom put it, like, and we talked to Kay Denton about this. The travel is insane. It's you know, you stay there for a whole week, and then you move on to a different environment, and the clubhouses, the places. I mean, I feel bad for minor leaguers, because I mean, a few years ago they had it worse. Of course, with the recent CBA, things got a little bit better, but it's still not great for minor leaguers, and we want to see them get paid more. We want to see them get, you know, just get better quality, I guess, if that's the word I'm going to use. But yeah, I'm not really too concerned about Condon. We'll see. I think he's going to improve, and again, let him grow, let him develop. And I think a lot of people were giving him comps to Wyatt Langford a little bit as well. Wyatt Langford quickly made his debut way too early, in my opinion.
He was not good.
He was
at
not
all
great
last year.
He was not great at all. So
He was not.
And the Rangers, they were like, hey, this guy, and I think he'll be good, but it's just way too early. And, you know, and I've harkened back to Brendan Rodgers in 2019. The Rockies called him up way too early. They should have waited till, you know, if 2020 was going to be a full year. I think 2020 was going to be his year, or heck, even 2021. You know, Rodgers was a high schooler. If those who remember, he was not a college player. So you got to be careful with guys like this, you know, and you know, Condon, let him, you know, because if he's going to be your face of your franchise in the future, take the heck care of him, you know. So you got to do your job, and hopefully the Rockies do their thing. And so far over the last few years, their development has been much better than previous years. And I think the Rockies, they're in a mode to where, hey, we need to turn this thing around fast, because right now we can't have 3 100-loss seasons in a row. We got to improve in 2025. And whether it's by calling up Dolander, Palmquist, who I think they're going to make their debuts this year, maybe even Gabriel Hughes, who I really like. He has that dog in him, as you guys say over at BSB. But yeah, it's gonna be great. And of course, I can't wait till the Paul Skeens and Chase Dolander matchup in the 2029 NLCS. That's gonna be so sick. Yeah, I just want to see that rematch. It's gonna be awesome.
Which team will Skeens be on?
It's gonna be
the
on.
Pirates.
I got a feeling that the Pirates could sign him to the first big more than 5 year plus 5. I think it's 5 year plus contract that never got. I think the only one they've given out to was Andrew McCutchen.
Yeah, I mean, once you get that good, you kind of bring in money when it comes to like fan sales and stuff. So I'm sure a cheap owner could justify that.
Yeah,
or maybe Bill Charrington will be, or maybe the Pirates should have a new ownership. But who knows? I mean, I think with how good Skeens is, you kind of force the hand of ownership.
Yeah.
You never know, though. I mean, even Luka got traded. So
true, very true.
Yeah. I still don't get that trade though.
Well, they're trying to get the team to Vegas. That's why they moved it.
Yeah.
But that's a different topic.
A different topic for a different podcast. Well, Lewis, hey man, thanks for coming on in. We appreciate you. And why don't you let the people know where they can find you and Blake Street Banner?
Yeah, Blake Street Banner, we're kind of on everything. We have 3 podcasts currently. We have one for all of the NL West, one for I think Patrick Lyons does one, and then we have the prospect one, which is Blake Street Road to Blake Street. Blake Street Bear on any platform really. Give us a follow. We will make sure to have Rockies Now on a pod, so look out for that.
Heck yeah, let's do that. Well, folks, thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Rockies Now podcast. If you don't follow us at Rockies Now, follow us at Rockies Now on Instagram, X, and Threads. And if you want to listen to our podcast, you can listen here live on YouTube, on Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. On behalf of myself, Adam, Tom, and of course, Mike, aka Lewis, we thank you for listening to this edition of the Rockies Now podcast. And as always, go Rockies.